And the next speaker is Frank Mittelbach, who didn't save my life by providing the porting of AMS Tech to LaTeX and making me addict to LaTeX. The title of the presentation is, of course, the LaTeX Companion, 3rd edition, Anecdotes and Lessons Learned.
That's difficult. That's not good. How do you do this? I have the wrong shirt, obviously. Yeah, it didn't hold. It's good? Good enough? Okay. Okay. Yeah, welcome to my talk just before lunch about a monster, which is not the L3 backend or the L3 language, not context, not something else. It's this. And you probably have seen it a little bit. If not, yeah, here we are. 3.5 kilograms heavy. So anybody who wins one of those two has to see if it fits the luggage. This was the first review we got on Amazon, and I must say I'm mighty pleased, except for seeing a misspelling of my name. But that's actually usual. And the person, I don't know who was he or she, is quite right. It was a really, really heavy task. So this year's the publication data. And you see one thing at the top, both books or parts are in multiples of 16. And that's not just by chance, in contrast to George Orwell. It's actually just because that's a magic number in many publishing processes. You need to have 16 pages, multiples, or if you have one more, then you have 15 empty pages at the end of your book. So this is something to watch out for. And I try to keep 1 or 2 pages empty. And it was good because, as you will see in the end, it turned out that I needed those last-minute corrections. Okay, so the other thing the review said was, I was slacking off, or we. Why does it take, or did take 5 years? So basically, we had a 3-phase project. I worked for maybe roughly a year reading 5,000 package documentations, plus thinking about where this package would fit, or sometimes just thinking, okay, good, next one. But often just cataloging. I had a huge spreadsheet. Cataloging where those things fit, how they relate to other packages, whether the next step then was figuring out which of those are worth putting together as a sort of unit which would form the companion, because you don't want to describe 5,000 packages just because they're there. In the end, I ended up with about 500, and yeah, for all of those, there was a lot of work to be done to, in this next phase, to think about examples, make sure everything actually works according to documentation. Seldom does. None of my packages did, because there were additions that were not documented and vice versa. So there's a lot of, in the second phase, which took about 3 years, and then of course people changed the rug under me, because they changed their package where I had already done the work to sort of work on documenting it. But that's understandable if it takes so long time. And then there's another one, which is the last year, which is really the time it took to get from finalizing the book through copy editing, indexing, everything to finish off. And the moral of the story is really here, do your maths early and try to do it correctly and have some thinking about what it really means you undertake a project like this, or any project which is more than 5 pages for a conference proceeding. For example, if you have something like 1,600 pages and there are average of 8 copy editing errors in it, just think about how much time you need to correct and do those things. It adds up to months very easily. So, what's more to say about the book? Many Stack Exchange minimal working examples show you a preamble with 20 packages. Some of them not necessary. The LaTeX Companion is much worse in this respect. I have actually 140 packages, or let's say .sty files loaded, and all of them are necessary in one way or the other. And on the plus side, it shows how many packages you can actually put together, and they work with each other if you're careful. On the downside, it's just not normal. That's the way it is. And yeah, another thing about this enormous number of packages, in chapter 10, I really worked through with Adam Twadow from Poland, who through all the fonts that are now available, even in PDF tag, and figuring out what the quality fonts are. And in the end, I have more than 100 font families being described and shown. And shown means I had to load them all into this document. And that blew actually Standard Tech Live, which is unusual, but that showed where you can still find limits that do not work. So what other packages are there? Yeah, certainly hyperref and bookmark. For main text, I used acro for the acronyms. If you do use this, you have to be a little bit careful about the fact that, or you learn this the bad way, you cannot use include only anymore, because then your text changes. Each time you have a different combination of included chapters. So this is one problem with the package. CS quote, yeah, that's normal to get standard quotation marks in different languages. Varioref actually saved my life, I would say, in some sense, even through I have written it myself. But if you think about having to do layouts and all your floats and example changes from one page to the next, and each time you would need to touch the text to say, that's on the next page. Or take away the reference about the page number because it's on the same page, which is also very odd looking. All these kind of little things. Varioref did this for me. So when I was coming to the layouting process, of course the text changed, but it changed automatically. So I hadn't do much about this. And the other one, which was really, really good for in my opinion, I mean, it's enormous. The fact that we nowadays have the possibility to do the HZ algorithm, and therefore getting slightly extended or compressed fonts gives a much better quality in the paragraph breaking. And I personally like hanging punctuation very much, so I did this as well. So what's not going? Yeah, bigger structures. The book is old. I mean, the first version was written in 1993. And so some of the class code is actually from the days when we developed LaTeX 2E. And it hasn't changed much in the class. I mean, So chapters, lists, and so they were all done the way LaTeX Core did it back then and still does it. So I didn't use any extra packages for this. Title talk was added recently to get partial table of contents per chapter. Of course, if you want to do any kind of decent tables in LaTeX, you need to add a little bit of extra support. That's the packages. Overpick is a nice package if you want to annotate some pictures. Yeah, caption is a, I would say, if you want to have decently styled captions, it's a no-brainer. And T-color box is great. We use that for the boxes where we talk about Unicode special, Unicode engine specialities, so that it's clearly marked and easy to find. So that was a nice addition as well. Page layout, the same. This is done manually. I would use these days geometry, I guess. Fancy header, that's already an old package, so it's already used for quite a while. Indexes, I come to this later, but I use make index, which gets you only that far, and the rest you have to done by scripting. If you want to get a good index, nothing else works. And BibTeX also is not surprising. BibTeX, because the previous editions used it before, NutBib for the citations. What is new this time is that we use bib units, which allows me to have two bibliographies in one run. One for the first part, the first book, and one for the second, because both books were produced as a single run, and then cut in the middle and sent as separate PDFs. Okay. Examples. This is really at the core of the book. We have about 1,500 in the book, and one important part that I learned is they have to be correct. And that's not easy. In the first book, we did this wrong, and I know that it always happens again to me if I'm not obeying this kind of sort of basic principle that you actually do the thing, not just talk about doing the thing. So if you have a picture and you explain what you did to produce the picture, guess what? Out of 10, one is not exactly linking up. So all examples are produced. So if you see a mistake in the example, then it should show in the source. Or it is a mistake that happened in the package that it is describing, but input and output is identical. Oh, sorry, identical. The output is produced from the source, and that's very important. So what we use for this is fancy verb to get the stuff out into a separate file, adding a preamble and a post-amble to it, running the whole thing, producing a PDF, cutting it to the size of what is necessary to load back, and loading that on the next run into the book, and so showing the source and the output side by side. You can still make a mistake because it takes a long time to produce 1,500 examples, so you don't do this all the time. So guess what? Don't change the example without rerunning it. That's still a problem along the way. Okay, yeah, those were sort of the important packages used by the book, but there are some sort of things that I classify as support packages. And what is really saving my life in this book is more rights. You may know, yeah, TAG has only 16 streams to write to files, and if all these 16 streams are used up, then TAG says, thank you. By end of story. It can't do more. And packages tend to open streams for good or bad reasons, because they want to have that extra lock, for example. And if you load 140, guess what? It needs something like 19 streams. And so this is the answer to this problem. It comes with a cost. Everything goes a little bit slower, but at least it goes. So I'm really grateful for Bruno to having produced this. The other support stuff is color spacing. We have spot colors in the books, one spot color, and that means we have to produce that, and that's not easy. If you have spot colors, you're only supposed to have the spot color and black in your PDF. No CMYK, no RGB, and some packages just hardwire something like RGB values in their code. You have to find this, then actually patching the stuff. There's no way around those for the book production. To-do notes, I like this. It's not perfect, but it helps a lot if you work on a longish project, because you can put all your remarks, notes, and something directly in the source and keep them around without making the layout going too bad differently. And the other thing, if you're one of those people who never have a problem with what you do, then you don't need it. But otherwise, having some extra structure in the log file is helpful to find out where a problem occurs, because if you load many files, it's not easy to see which file is currently open from which this error is coming from, so that helped. Another one, Lino, I think it's one of the oldest packages, really. It's amazing. I was able to use this package, which is patching the output routine and everything, to produce line numbers for the whole book, with one exception. There was one point where I had to disable it for a certain point. Can't remember why. But basically, it worked throughout without any problem. And this was necessary for doing the indexing, because indexing was done by giving the indexer a line-numbered form of the book, and then he gave me indexes back according to lines. So that was the idea. The other thing, if you have a big project, you need source control, and certainly source control in this case, previously it was SVN, now we used Git, and yeah, it's just important to be able to be on the safe side, to be able to roll back something, to figure out what changed. And what is also quite helpful is the this job thing, mkjob tech mf. You can basically get a full set of all files that are being used in a run and collect them in your own tree. And this is a tree that I put on the source control as well, so I had always, well, regularly information if something changed. Now normally, that is not so important if you keep your tech system maybe more or less stable, but in this case, I certainly wanted always to have the current versions of everything. So it changed quite a lot with what changed outside. Some words on the production workflow, because that is also interesting. This book requires 7 runs of the full book before it's stabilized. It surprised me a bit. I expected something, but I didn't expect 7 runs. There are reasons for it, and if you think about it, what the complexity is, first there are no examples, then the examples are not on the right page, and if they are on a right page or a left page, they look different, therefore you need to track this takes another run, then things change because of varioRef, the text gets longer or shorter, that might change the line breaks, and then 7 runs. The whole thing takes on my iMac half an hour, and if I make the example, it takes another 2.5 hours. So a book production from 0 to everything takes 3 hours on that machine, which is not the slowest one. The bottom part is very, very important. None of this can work without checks, and these checks have to be automatic. Automatic, automatic. This is really the point. You have to build yourself checks for everything you can think of, and they need to be automatically tested. Don't expect that you can remember what you need to look for at the right point in time and actually do this. Also, something like the 7 runs, I had scripts which were doing everything. I had scripts which were doing some of it. It's really important that you have a workflow that is stable and you just press a button and wait, and you get errors back and everything. So this is otherwise, yeah, I'm not saying nothing is wrong in the book, but otherwise it would look worse. Lessons learned from all the 3 editions. First of all, I already said that. Not just describe something, actually make the stuff when you describe it and use it. Both is necessary. In the first edition, we had a bunch of those cases where we just made floats and described it, and they went out of sync. Something I always preach: never think about pagination, line breaking, and page breaking whatsoever before your text and everything is finished. Well, this time around, I didn't obey myself, and just about at the end of copy editing, more or less, I looked at the stuff and decided, well, actually the typewriter could be half a point smaller in size. Or 0.1, I think it was. Because then it aligns a little bit better with the other stuff and can't do much harm, can it? It took 2 days to get the sources back into, and the output back into sync. Yep. The other thing that I learned over the 3 editions is try to keep all the layout code as separate as possible. The very simple suggestion is, instead of saying something like \page break or \clear page, because you want a certain point with an explicit, say something like, I don't know, final clear page, or whatever you come up with as a prefix. Make your own commands that are just aliases for the standard ones. Then you already distinguish between an extra vertical space that you always want, or an extra vertical space that you added to make this page look right. Because next time around, you want to get rid of all the extra spaces you added if you do a next edition, or just an update to something. And those that are really meant to be always there, they should stay. So this is very important to separate as best as possible. Yeah, later in the game you need to start, you really need to test for pagination changes. When you start doing your layouting, when the copy editing comes in, you don't want to sort of see something being messed up and you end up with half-empty pages. And we got better in the 3rd edition, we got better in the 2nd edition, but I think this is now okay. And as I said before, automated the testing. I have seen books being sold where the bibliography showed the bib LaTeX label. No joke. I was surprised that it was done with LaTeX, but you could clearly see that it was a bib LaTeX label showing up in the text rather than the actual reference. And I remember that one of the Kopka books were very embarrassing for Edison Wesley, Germany, where everything had question marks instead of page numbers. Yeah, those kind of things should not happen, and they can be prevented by having automatically testing for all these kind of things at the end of your run, and the point is automation. Some statistics. Making a book like this is really manual work. Tech or not tech, the end of the story is if you want to have a good layout, you get 80% and the last 20% is the hard work to make it doing. So this book has about 60 double spreads where I either went one line up, so one line less, or one line more on the double spread to avoid a real problem at the end. And the problem with the companion is because of the big examples, they just don't want to break nicely. I mean, they usually end up in the middle of a page break. And so this is not easy. If you do layouting, you have to find a method how to get a whole chapter going. And if you start from the beginning, make everything fine, you end up in the middle of the chapter suddenly, and there's no way to get the next page going without having this amount of empty space. So what I started to do is to go the other way around. I first looked at the whole chapter 5. Yeah, that's okay. Never managed to get through those. But what I did was to look at the whole chapter, then find the problematic spots, put hard page breaks before and after, and try to get this spot working in one or two solutions, and then started from the beginning to figure out if you can reach those solutions. In other words, global optimization on page breaking done manually. I have, as some of you know, tried to solve that problem programmatically and actually succeeded with a prototype, and I had hoped to have it here for this work, but it's still a prototype. So everything by hand. You see a lot of stuff there. The other thing that I did, just quickly, this spread stuff was done on the outside, so for each chapter I have a file that tells me whether I have a normal page or a long page or a short page, and then that file is being used by the run, and you can easily change your layouting this way. I have also recording the pagination. This is giving me information about the final page simply by boxing and unboxing before ship out. So I get information about how much space there is. This is important for many reasons, one of which is I keep a record of that file and compare it to the previous run, so I see if things changes at the very end. So if I make deliberate changes, I expect changes in a certain area of that file, but if something else completely changes, then I have done something which unexpectedly changes somewhere else in the file, the problems. So the book got too big, so we got into this problem. What do you do if you suddenly need to split a single book into two? And there are a bunch of questions that then needs to be answered, and it's not easy to answer them. We played around, and I thought about many things. What we ended up with is this. In the book, we restart page numbers per book, because that's otherwise hard to use if you have 1,507 or something as a number. And then we have these other things done that we cross-references from one part to the other by marking the cross-reference especially. We use bibliographies for each part, and we use a combined index for both parts, which means we have these pages twice in each book once. Oops, doesn't work? Does work. Digital version is different. You want a single PDF, and then, of course, you don't want to have two indexes in the middle. You don't want to have a front matter in the middle. There's a number of things that you need to do differently, and everything had to be in a single file by the end of the day, so there was some programming involved to get both versions out of the same source. But this is what we came up with. And there are some non-trivial stuff that suddenly, in 2 examples, I have a bibliography used, actually. So the example uses something out of the bibliography. And this is now changing, so I had examples that I had to redo for the digital version. 1 minute, okay, 1 or 2. How to make a good index. That's really something which is non-trivial. I don't know if we make a good index. I hope we do. A couple of things that you can see. First of all, we have the symbols always also showing you actually the symbol, more or less at least. There are differences in the page numbering. If this is blue and bold, that means that this is the main reference where you find the definition or something you really should look up first. You see whether it's coming from part 1 or part 2, or both. What else? If it is an example, it is done in italics, so you know this thing is used in the example as well. Interesting is that the line breaking tends to happen between part 1 and part 2. For example, a line event environment. Part 1 is on first line and part 2 started on the second line, but this is not happening if this other would produce 3 lines. So for example, Allegria fonts at the second or third line, that is not starting another row. So that's the way the index was done. Yeah, this is a set of disasters that happened just before going to print. I'm not going to go into those. We solved them. But of course there will be others, and therefore there is an errata file, and it is improvement for everybody, every reader, if we find the error. So I invite everybody who has the book and spot something being wrong to send it to me. So we did in the past time. There's actually a chance to win a prize, but that shouldn't be. The prize is also that it makes the book better for everybody. But there is a real prize, or 5 or 6, depending on how long Pearson is going to do it. So if you find something in the book, you have a chance today by looking through it, even without owning it, please tell me. And with that, off to lunch. This is not meant to be a design show. It's just taking from page 11 of the second book, basically, how to do stuff badly with fonts. Okay, thank you.
Any comment or question?
Is it on? I don't think so. Okay. Now? No? 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 Yes? Yes!
Okay.
One short question. Why the decision to include the examples in the sources of the main file instead of going the other way around, having a folder with all the examples in separate files and only including them would save you one run on every run?
Well, first of all, historical. Second, I want to have the examples next to the source where I describe it. I don't want to have those things open. That just works nicely if you work with the example. Sometimes you have to change the example. I didn't speak about, in the layouting process, for example, one of the tricks was, oh, this example is too big. Well, make it smaller. Or we need some space without filling some space. Why not make an extra line in this example to make it look nicer, this page. Those kind of things. It's very nice if this is all in the right kind of place. So this is an advantage. Taking the stuff out of the source into an extra file as it done is all automatic. And yes, it needs a first run, but practically during the development, the examples were already pre-made and they stayed pre-made unless I changed an example. So that didn't cost me anything other than in the very, very final run where I always decided to go from scratch and throw away everything that is generated throughout. But otherwise, I find it good to have those things in one place, one chapter per, well, actually, these days it's 500 files or something because it's one file per package, basically. But then everything of that documentation is in one place. Way of working.
You mentioned the structured log package.
Yeah.
But I couldn't find it
Um,
on the CTAN.
Well, it is part of LaTeX core, so you don't find it as a separate package. It's a small addition that is automatically delivered by LaTeX. So, yeah, this is one of those things where we are not very good in the LaTeX core. If it is, there are some packages which we miss TechDoc documentation because they just come out of one of the LaTeX core files that build the format, and structured log is one of those cases. So maybe we should get better. But it was documented in LaTeX news, whatever, recently. So if you do TechDoc LaTeX news, then you find it, definitely. And it's documented over there. Oh, forgot. Yeah, look in the back. Yeah, somewhere, yeah.
Maybe you just need to have the C10 team make it easier to find there.
Yeah. The problem is we always have these little things to improve. And my experience is that they still hasn't got 48 hours. It's a lot falls back, yeah, but I agree, there is something wrong there. Lunchtime?
Last question.
Last
Because
question.
lunch is waiting.
Sorry for this trivial last question. You use PDF separate what for? Did you print out all pages separately?
No. Sorry, that was in the examples. When I make the example, it becomes a single file. Typically, this file has 2 pages in it because, well, for various reasons. And one of them I want to take back into as a PDF graphics into the book next to this example source. So this PDF separate is there to get 1 or 2 of the PDF pages into separate graphics. That's all it is. And the other one is crop, where I cut off everything which is white space on the outside to make the example as small as possible, just showing what is necessary.
So thank you, Frank, for the talk and mostly for the book. And of course, we need to thank again Ulrike, who's the co-author, of course.
I had prepared something, I didn't look at it, so I forgot 2/3 of it and said too much about others. First of all, in the audience there is one person who helped me enormously, and I would like to thank him and I hope he's there, Nelson. He actually read through all those pages. He was the first proofreader and copy editor for content, and he marked everything up, and I got them back as marked, handwritten, marked pages, scanned in back. All pages, enormous. And then I also didn't say something about it, but yeah, current authors, nearly everybody is here. Ulrike is part of the author team. She did help me a lot. And Johannes is there, and Joseph is there. And the only person missing, unfortunately, is Javier. But basically, most of the authors are there, so you can bug them as well.